Welcome back to Unboxing OD. I'm your host, Kenneth Pearson, co-founder and OD consultant at Pearson & Pearson LLC and founder of Live a Haiku Life. In this episode, we're talking about something that can make or break any organizational development effort: leadership. Now, I know leadership is one of those words that gets used so often, it starts to feel like a corporate buzzword. It's in every job description, every business book, and every LinkedIn thought piece. But in OD, leadership isn't just about titles, authority, or decision-making. It's about influence. It's about setting the tone, modeling behaviors, and shaping the culture in a way that determines whether change efforts actually take hold or quietly fade into the background. We've all seen it happen. A company launches a bold new initiative, maybe a leadership development program, a new approach to teamwork, or an effort to improve inclusivity. At first, there's excitement, maybe even a flashy launch event, but within a few months, everything settles back into old habits. Why? Because leadership wasn't truly engaged. They may have supported the idea in theory, but they didn't model the change themselves. And when employees notice that leadership isn't walking the talk, the message is clear. This isn't a priority. So today, we're going to unpack the role leadership plays in OD, the consequences of misalignment, and most importantly, how we as OD professionals can better engage leaders in meaningful, lasting change. Let's start with a simple truth. If OD is about strengthening organizations through people, processes, and culture, then leadership is the single most important driver of that change. Leadership isn't just another piece of the OD puzzle. It's the catalyst that determines whether our efforts take off or stall out. Consider Netflix. Their culture deck became legendary not because it was filled with feel-good corporate jargon, but because leadership actually lived it. They didn't just say they valued innovation and autonomy. They designed their policies, performance reviews, and leadership behaviors to reinforce those principles. The result? A culture where employees felt trusted, empowered, and encouraged to take smart risks. Contrast that with Uber's early years, where leadership prioritized rapid expansion above all else. The result was a culture that rewarded aggressive behavior, overlooked ethical concerns, and created internal competition that eroded collaboration. It's a perfect example of how leadership doesn't just influence culture, it is the culture. But this dynamic isn't limited to high-profile tech companies. I once worked with a mid-sized healthcare organization that wanted to foster a more collaborative environment. Leadership backed the initiative by hosting workshops, implementing team-based performance goals, and even physically redesigning office spaces to encourage cross-functional interaction. Within months, employees reported feeling more connected and engaged, and the company saw tangible improvements in efficiency and morale. The takeaway here is, leadership isn't just about approving OD initiatives. It's about embodying them. Leaders set the standard for behavior in an organization. If they're disengaged, indifferent, or resistant to change, the rest of the organization will follow suit. Leaders don't just influence OD efforts, they determine their success. One of the biggest ways they do this is through the behaviors they model. Imagine an organization rolls out a big initiative around psychological safety. Leadership holds town halls, sends out internal communications, and maybe even brings in an expert to run a few workshops. But behind closed doors, leaders still shut down dissenting opinions in meetings, avoid uncomfortable conversations, and reward employees who conform rather than challenge ideas. What happens? Employees quickly recognize that the initiative is all talk and no action. And just like that, it fails. The reality is, employees don't take cues from company slogans. They take cues from their leaders. Leadership behaviors, whether intentional or not, set the expectations for the rest of the organization. If leaders prioritize transparency, employees will follow suit. If leaders ignore feedback, employees will stop offering it. Leadership also determines whether OD initiatives receive the necessary resources and long-term commitment to be successful. For example, leadership development programs don't create meaningful change when they're treated as one-and-done workshops. The ones that actually shift behaviors are those where senior leaders actively participate, mentor up-and-coming managers, and reinforce the learning in their day-to-day interactions. At its core, leadership in OD isn't about just approving change efforts. It's about demonstrating them. If an organization wants to promote collaboration, leaders must be collaborative. If they want employees to embrace continuous learning, leaders need to show that they're learners too. Because no matter how many policies or initiatives an organization rolls out, the culture will always reflect the behaviors of its leaders. So how do we, as OD professionals, ensure leadership isn't just passively supporting OD, but actively championing it? First, we need to involve leaders early. Too often, OD professionals design initiatives in isolation and then wonder why leadership isn't fully invested. But leaders need to feel like co-creators of change, not just recipients of it. That means including them in the design phase, incorporating their feedback, and making them part of the solution, not just the audience. One of the most successful OD initiatives I've seen came from a company that used a design thinking approach to leadership engagement. Instead of rolling out a fully formed initiative, they invited leaders to collaborate in workshops where they identified challenges and co-created solutions. This early involvement meant that when it came time to implement the changes, leadership wasn't just supportive, they were personally invested in making them succeed. Second, we need to speak the language of business outcomes. As OD professionals, we're passionate about things like psychological safety and employee engagement, but leaders are often juggling financial targets, operational goals, and stakeholder expectations. If we want leadership buy-in, we need to frame OD efforts in terms they care about, like reducing turnover, increasing efficiency, or strengthening innovation. When leaders see that OD isn't just about people, but also about performance, they're far more likely to get on board. Finally, we need to build momentum through quick wins. I once worked with an organization that wanted to create a culture of inclusion. Instead of tackling everything at once, we started small by changing the structure of leadership meetings to be more inclusive. The results were immediate, and the positive feedback built credibility for more substantial changes. This start small, think big approach works because it builds confidence. When leaders see OD driving real results, no matter how small, they're more likely to support bigger, long-term initiatives. Of course, engaging leadership in OD isn't always easy. Some of the most common roadblocks include resistance to change. Leaders who have been doing things the same way for years may struggle to adopt new approaches. The next is misalignment at the top. If senior leaders aren't on the same page, OD efforts will suffer. The last one is short-term thinking. Many organizations prioritize immediate results over long-term development. The key to overcoming these challenges? Start with leadership alignment. If senior leaders share a unified vision and approach, that clarity will cascade through the organization. This might mean investing time in leadership retreats, one-on-one coaching, or facilitated discussions to ensure leaders are fully bought in. So here's something to think about. How does leadership influence OD in your organization? Are leaders truly engaged in driving change, or are they just passively supporting it? And what steps can you take to better align leadership with OD efforts? When leadership and OD are truly in sync, organizations don't just implement change, they sustain it. That's when OD stops being an initiative and starts being a part of the organization's DNA. That's it for today's episode of Unboxing OD. Next time, we're diving into the power of psychological safety, why it's essential for innovation, collaboration, and employee well-being, and how OD can help create workplaces where people feel safe to speak up, challenge ideas, and bring their best selves to work. Let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on LinkedIn, share your thoughts, and let me know what's resonating with you. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and take care of your organization and the people who make it thrive.